Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. So tonight we have a special learners service. So a few people have requested some explanations of the prayers. And you can find in this handout more detailed explanation of the history and some of the ideas expressed in the prayers and the structure of the prayer book. But I'm going to give maybe a more accessible, lighter version of that, just a quick explanation of the general purpose or meaning of each prayer. So if you want to make sure that you have a prayer book from the entrance. And we'll start on page 1 in the middle with, actually, I'll share a little bit about where our prayers come from first. So if you wondered, where do we come up with Jewish prayers? Do we just pick some guy named Shlomo to write them all and call it a day? There's actually a lot of different sources of Jewish prayers. So some Jewish prayers come from the Torah. They're direct quotes from the Torah. It's as if we took the Declaration of Independence and turned it into a song. It's just an important text and you put it to a melody and you use it as a prayer. So the Torah consists of 5 books, right? The 5 books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And a lot of Jews think, oh, what's the Jewish Bible? It's the Torah. But there's actually more to our scriptural tradition than just the first 5 books. We have the whole Hebrew Bible, or Tanakh, which includes 39 books. It's the same as what Christians call the Old Testament, but some of the books are in a slightly different order. And Tanakh stands for Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Torah, instruction; Nevi'im, prophets; Ketuvim, writings. So some of our prayers take little quotes from the prophet section, like when we sing Lecha Dodi. It's very subtle allusion. You have to know the whole Tanakh in and out to pick up on it sometimes. There's a part where we say Uri, Uri, right? Shir Daberi, right? That comes from the book of Judges. There's a song of Deborah in the book of Judges. When you say Uri, Uri, arise, arise, in the feminine command form, speaking to Deborah. But the author of Lecha Dodi took that verse that was about Deborah and made it about Shabbat. So sometimes it's very sneaky allusions to quotes from the rest of the Jewish Bible. But a lot of our prayers are actually lines from the book of Psalms, which is called Tehillim in Hebrew. And some Jews will literally just carry a small book of Tehillim with them to pray. If a loved one gets sick, they'll say certain prayers. Sometimes people will do prayers from Tehillim that start with the first letter of their name, right? So people use Tehillim as prayers a lot because Psalms, right, the Tehillim, are special poems that are very rich with emotions. Some of the Psalms are about joy. Some of them are about sadness. A lot are about fear and betrayal and gratitude. So you can easily see how Psalms of gratitude end up being part of our prayer service. And we're going to start our service tonight with a psalm that's one of the happy psalms, right? Hine Matov comes from 133. And you can look at the English translation, how good it is and how pleasant when we dwell together in unity. Hine Matov u'manaim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manaim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov, hine matov, ya la la, ya la 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 la. Hine matov, hine matov, ya la la, ya la 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 la. Hine matov u'manaim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manaim, shevet achim gam yachad. Right. And some Jewish prayers don't come from the Torah or anywhere else in the Hebrew Bible. They come from poets who lived long after the Bible was finalized. So these poets might take ideas from the Torah or the rest of the Tanakh, or they might take teachings from the Talmud, which is where the rabbis elaborate on the teachings of the Torah, and ideas from Jewish philosophers like Maimonides, who tries to describe what is God, right? Maybe we can only say what God is not rather than what God is, right? How do you explain the essence? So if you know the prayer Yigdal, that's taking Jewish philosophy and turning it into a poem. And then a lot of our prayers also borrow from the teachings of Jewish mystics. And a lot of these prayers, these poems created for prayer, incorporate ideas from all three sources. And we're going to see that with our next prayer, Shalom Aleichem, on page 3. So our next prayer takes biblical and Talmudic teachings about angels called malachim and turns it into a poem where we're basically asking God's angels to protect us as we travel to and from synagogue on Shabbat, which used to be a treacherous journey with all those bandits on the road. So page 3, Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Barchoni L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Zechem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So just as a reminder, if you ever want to know the translation, you can just look in the tiny italic text, right? That'll say what the Hebrew's saying. And I'd like to invite up Ed to elaborate on the angels, bottom of page 2.
We understand that ordinary people are messengers of the Most High. They go about their tasks in holy anonymity, often even unknown to themselves. Yet if they had not been there, if they had not said what they said or did what they did, it would not be the way it is now. We would not be the way we are now. Never forget that you yourself may be a messenger, perhaps even one whose errand extends over several lifetimes.
Thank you, Ed. So many of the prayers we say are very formulaic Hebrew blessings, beginning with the same words, Baruch Atah Adonai, blessed are you, God. And these blessings can express gratitude for all sorts of things. And sometimes it's for the beautiful sight of trees and nature, a wonderful smell. But there's also gratitude for the opportunity to fulfill a mitzvah, right, to do a commandment. So most of the commandment blessings reference clear commandments from the Torah. Like for Sukkot, it specifically says to take some plants and shake them, right? To celebrate with these beautiful plants in the kind of fall harvest time. But we have the same formula for the Shabbat candle blessing, and it's unique because the Torah never actually says in any verse that you have to light 2 candles for Shabbat. In fact, the Torah says don't light fire on Shabbat. And the rabbis of the Talmud knew that people would be very tempted to break this rule, right? Especially if it's cold and dark, right? So they decided that instead of sitting in the cold and the dark for the whole duration of Shabbat, they would make it a practice to light Shabbat candles immediately before Shabbat starts and just let the candles keep burning. So you're not in the cold, you're not in the dark. And it's traditional to do this about 18 minutes before Shabbat begins and have your candles keep going. There was another group of Jews who didn't believe in the rabbi's authority, and they were called the Karaites. They argued with the rabbis, and they're like, you can't just tell people that it's a mitzvah to light Shabbat candles. And this argument went back and forth. They sent mean letters to each other, to the point where the rabbi said not only were Jews allowed to light candles before Shabbat started, but they were commanded to do so. And so that's how we get the wording of commandments, right? Asher kichanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, right? For the Shabbat candle blessing. So I would like to invite up Courtney to light our Shabbat candles this week. And she has sent no mean letters to the Karaites this week.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
And we're on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. And we continue with the introduction to Shehechianu on page 5 in the middle. The Shehechianu is an ancient blessing that traces back to Talmudic times, which was before the 6th century of our Common Era. It's mentioned multiple times in the Talmud, in the tractate about blessings called Brachot, and a tractate about Passover stuff, and a tractate about Sukkot. This blessing is traditionally recited when doing or experiencing something that occurs infrequently from which one derives pleasure or benefit. So some examples would include beginning of a holiday, the performance of a particular mitzvah, first time eating a new fruit since it's been Rosh Hashanah, seeing a friend for the first time in over a month, acquiring a new home, new clothing, the birth of a child, conversion to Judaism. So any special thing you want to celebrate, you normally do with Shehechianu. And at Orami, we have the unique custom to recite the Shehechianu every week. Every week is something wonderful to celebrate. So I invite anyone here who has something Shehechianu worthy of to share your good news and joy with the community. Wonderful. Welcome back. I'm glad you had a good time with friends. Adrian?
I just learned I'm going to be a grandma.
Ooh, Mazel Tov. Exciting to have a grandchild soon. Yeah, Sarah?
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I totally forgot.
All right. Lisa had her hand up, so maybe it'll come back to you later. Yeah, Lisa.
Well, two things. We just got back from being in New York with our 2 grandchildren.
Welcome back.
Also, we are so excited that Sisters of Salam Shalom are here with us tonight.
Yeah, so welcome. We're all very glad that you're here with us tonight. Ed?
A close friend of mine who's been unemployed got a job.
Oh, Mazel Tov. Glad your friend got a new job. Bruce?
We just got back from a 2-week trip in Europe that ended in Amsterdam for 4 nights, and we didn't get COVID.
Yeah, Mazel Tov. Best news. Yeah, awesome. Welcome back. I'm glad you're healthy. Russ?
We had dinner with my grandson last night.
Wonderful. Good dinner. And Jenny?
On Sunday, we celebrated my dad.
Awesome. Happy birthday.
And Lisa's
Yeah,
7th.
Lisa's was Friday.
And
Awesome.
Jean's was yesterday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
We
So,
celebrate all
yeah.
3 birthdays
awesome.
on our pad.
Wonderful to celebrate so many birthdays. Yeah, Sarah, you remember? Yeah.
And also, if it makes you feel any better, I think I have more gray hairs than David too. So, yeah, tomorrow is my friend's business's 1-year birthday. Claudia's Makeup is turning 1.
Yay.
Not to officially plug, but like if you like arugula, they sell
That's
a
good.
lot. There's gonna be cake and like records.
Are they going to put candles on the rugelach?
I hope so.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a birthday cake though,
Okay.
so
Candles are covered there.
you guys should check it out.
Oh, wonderful. So lots of blessings to celebrate, and we express our gratitude with the words of Shehechianu found at the bottom of page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen. So Lecha Dodi, which I mentioned earlier, is one of the prayers that combines direct quotes from the Tanakh, from the Hebrew Bible, with teachings from the Talmud and mystical tradition. And the overall idea of Lecha Dodi is it's comparing Shabbat to a bride that we welcome into our lives with joy. It's considered the most joyous day, right, to your wedding day. So just as we celebrate Shabbat, it is with the same joy that we would welcome and celebrate a wedding. So we're on page 11 for Lecha Dodi. Extra bonus kind of trivia about Lecha Dodi. This was written by a guy named Shlomo, and he snuck his initials into the verses. So the first verse starts with shel, right? Second verse l, third verse m, and then last verse the he at the end of his name. So that's how we figured out who the author was, Shlomo Halevi Alkovets. There was a tradition to sneak your name into the poetry. So, and if you forget the verse order, you just remember how Shlomo is spelled and you can do it. So, all right. So page 11. We're just going to do 4. We're not going to do his full name. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Verse 1. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, Hishmianu el hamyuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 2. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki hi mekor habracha, Merosh mikadem nesucha, נעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. And we rise together and face the entrance to symbolically welcome in the presence of Shabbat, and we sing verse 8. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. We turn to page 15 to learn about the Baruch Hu with the intro. So the Baruch Hu is the official call to prayer, which marks the beginning of the Ma'ariv, or evening prayer service. In recognition of our need to prepare for any serious activity, the Jewish prayer service offers us a warm-up period before we approach the most spiritually significant prayers that follow. The Baruch Hu borrows the wording and call-and-response style of Psalm 135. As a call-and-response prayer, the Baruch Hu also reminds us that we are not alone in our spiritual quests. We hear a voice of blessing and echo its meaning back with our own voices and our own unique blessings. It is customary for prayer leaders to bend their knees at the word Baruch Hu, which means bless, and shares the same root as berech, which means knee. So you bend your knee, and then you bow from the waist. The leaders then stand up straight at the word Adonai, which refers to God. And the reason for standing straight at the word Adonai comes from Psalm 145, which says, Adonai makes all who are bent stand up straight again. So the congregation repeats this knee bending and bowing in their response, bowing at Baruch and then standing straight up again at Adonai. So, Baruch Hu. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Please be seated. So the Talmud, you could say, either describes or prescribes, right? It shows us what Jews were doing or tells us what Jews should do based on the prayer customs from close to 2,000 years ago, or at least 1,500 years ago. And when it's talking about the way Jews prayed back then, it said there were prayers before and after the Shema. So one of the prayers that comes before the Shema is thanking God for light and evening and the natural world. And one of the prayers that comes after the Shema is much longer, and it talks about miracles and redemption, especially being redeemed from slavery in Egypt. So let's look at the English translation of Ma'ariv Aravim on page 16. And let's read that together. This is the nature prayer. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, power of the universe, whose word brings on the evening twilight. With wisdom you open the gates of the heavens, and with understanding make the ages pass and the seasons cycle. You arrange the stars across the sky according to your will. You create day and night. You roll away the light from before the darkness, and the darkness from before the light. You make the day pass and bring it on the night, separating day from night. You are a living and enduring God. May you reign over us forever and ever. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who brings on the evening twilight. And we often do an abbreviated version of this prayer about nature with roll into dark on the bottom of page 16. So we'll sing that together now. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. And the Shema is the most important prayer in Judaism. So it's a direct quote from the Torah, from the 5th book, Deuteronomy. And it includes a teaching in this Torah passage that says we should say these exact words when we lie down and when we rise up. So that's why the Shema is part of the evening prayer service and the morning prayer service, when we get up and when we start relaxing and get ready to go to bed. And some people also say the Shema when they get up in the morning to kind of spiritually frame their day, and when they go to bed at nighttime. So the Shema is often one of the first prayers that Jewish children learn. It's also, according to tradition, supposed to be the last prayer that a Jew says before dying. And the Shema is both a statement of faith about there being one God and a statement of belonging to the Jewish people and community. So we're declaring quite a lot when we sing the Shema. So please rise for the Shema on the bottom of page 18. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema please be seated. We continue near the middle of page 19. So the V'ahavta is technically part of the Shema from the same Torah passage. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ug'shartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, lihiot lachem le'elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem. So we turn to page 20. So the Talmud said there's a longer prayer about redemption after the Shema. So the Hebrew word for redemption is ge'ula, which is to be like kind of rescued or even redeemed by a relative if you get kidnapped. So we're going to do a modern responsive ge'ula. We'll read the italics, page 20. We worship the power that unites the universe, a promise of harmony for all. Before our eyes there is a vision of perfection, order, and goodness. When will redemption come? Long ago we escaped the tyranny of Egypt. Our people saw the power of the Most High. And we continue with Micha Mocha, the bottom of page 21. Yai lai 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 yai la 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 ya la la yai lai 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 ya la 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 yai lai 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 ya la 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 ya la la yai lai 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 ya la 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 la. Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai, Micha mocha ne'etar ba'kodesh, Nora tehilot seifele, Nora tehilot seifele. And both the Micha Mocha and the Vishamru, coming next, are direct quotations from the Torah. They both come from the same book of Exodus, the second book of the Torah. The Micha Mocha, right, you can see some of the English translation in the bottom of page 21. It takes the most famous part of Shirat Hayam, the song at the sea, when our ancestors escaped Egypt, and they're not sure if they're going to be able to escape Pharaoh's army, because they get to the water's edge, right? Then the water splits into two, so they're able to walk across to freedom. So we just take the most famous line from this song, "Who is like you, God, among the things that are worshipped?" Right? And then we add a couple extra things about redemption. Right? So that's where this prayer came from, mostly the Torah quote, and then poetic people adding stuff about more redemption. And then Vishamru is just pure quote from the Torah, nothing more, nothing less. So we continue with Vishamru in the middle of page 23. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים אדוני עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. The Amidah is our central prayer, and it has some special choreography. So we're allowed to sit for most of our prayers, but the Amidah is a Hebrew word that literally means standing. And we stand or we rise to show particular respect for a prayer. The way you might rise, like back in the olden days when the king came, you didn't just sit, you were like, oh, it's the king, everybody up, everybody up. And some weddings, they're like, oh, everybody rise for the bride, right? So when you want to show extra respect and honor to someone, you rise. So we show extra respect to this prayer by rising. And this prayer is also thought to be by the rabbis of the Talmud. When they saw the temple in Jerusalem destroyed, and they were not able to bring the sacrifices that are described in the Torah anymore, they had to find something to connect with God, right? And they felt that the Amidah was like the complete substitute, the best they could do for those sacrifices that used to be offered in the Jerusalem temple. So the prayer, the words we have now, the first part you can see in the middle of page 24, that comes from the book of Psalms, and it's kind of a preparation verse. Again, we always want to prepare spiritually, you get in the right mindset. Things are always better when your head is in the game, right? So we get our head in the game for the special prayer with this warm-up from Psalms. Open my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. We're asking God for help to offer this prayer. And then the Amidah actually includes a lot of sub-prayers. During the week, it's a whole lot of requests about different things, including agriculture. On Shabbat, we don't have as many requests. We try to appreciate creation as it is, right? The world is pretty good. Do we need to ask for more video games? No, we can wait till tomorrow, right? So the first little piece of the Amidah prayer is called the Avot, and some call it Avot ve'imahot. This is about our ancestors. Before we ask for anything we want, we establish the chain of connection, right? We say, hey, God, you remember Abraham, right? Abraham was pretty great. And Isaac, also great. Jacob, super great, right? We're descended from them, right? So you paid a lot of attention to them. Could you pay attention to us and our needs and our requests? So kind of establishing that relationship that goes back to the first Jews. And then after that, we have the next part of the Amidah called the Givurot, where we're still not asking for anything. First, we just kind of put out there, you are descended from people you used to do nice things for. Then we say, what are some of the nice things God does, right? Healing the sick, freeing the captive, supporting the fallen, all these wonderful, kind deeds that we want God to continue doing and that we can do, right? When we emulate God, that we can help to heal the sick and free the captive and all of these things. So that is, those are the two main prayers we're going to do for the Amidah. We're going to skip over all the middle stuff. You can skim it to kind of see what the traditional prayers are about. And we'll also have time for silent prayer to just pray the prayers of your own heart. And then we'll come back together for Shalom Rav, a prayer for peace. So for the Amidah, please rise. Middle of page 24. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, v'Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imahot, U'mevi ge'ula lifnei bneihem, Lema'an shemo be'ahava, Melech ozer u'moshia u'magin, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol, Atah Rav le'hoshia, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofech cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar. Chamocha ba'al gevurot, Umito melach, Melech memit, Umechayei, Umatmeach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei hakol. And please be seated for our standing prayer. As we continue with a quiet moment for personal prayer or reflection. Page 27. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon, lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon, lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. V'tov b'einecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שומריו על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. And we turn to page 33. We'll do part of the introduction to Mishaberach. So, for generations, Jews have prayed on behalf of those within their midst who are in need of healing. These prayers have taken a variety of forms, but they always ask God, the source of all, for a complete healing, a healing of soul and a healing of body. During public prayers, healing prayers were often offered during the Torah service, which was the time that most people were gathered together in the service to pray. So before the Reform movement tried to add a time, right, that everyone shows up and sits down and is on the same page, people just kind of came to services when they made it, and by the Torah service, pretty much everyone would be there. So when we have the maximum power of our prayer community together, that is when we offer prayers on behalf of those who are sick. So tonight, we pray for Jessica Crow, Amanda Furman, Jessica Gill, Beth Levine, Rabbi Jerry Levy, Natalie Rayner, and Alex Simon. Are there other loved ones whose healing we wish to pray for tonight? Sarah?
Elsa Fryman, Lisa Fryman, and Steve Fletcher. Dennis Ahern. Wanda Ferguson.
With the power of community, we pray for their refuah shlema, their complete healing of body and or spirit, with the words of Mishaberach found at the bottom of page 33. Mishaberach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. So we don't always know exactly where our prayers come from. Some of them we have those great hints like Lecha Dodi with Shlomo writing his name into it. But a lot of the prayers are kind of mysterious. The Talmud might discuss the idea of that prayer, but not say whose wording ended up being the standard version of the prayer. And one of the prayers that we really don't know where it came from, but we have a few clues, is the Aleinu prayer. So there's a legend that Aleinu was written by a Babylonian rabbi named Rav, who lived in the 3rd century. That was kind of the tradition. People thought maybe he composed it specially for Rosh Hashanah, but some other scholars have found indications that the prayer may have existed even before his lifetime. So we don't know who wrote it, and it may have been used in the temple for a particular ritual, but like many of our other prayers, we don't know if it was one individual, a group of people, an avodah committee who sat together, right, and wrote some beautiful prayers for the community to use, but sometimes the mystery makes the prayers all the more beautiful. So Aleinu, in terms of the text, it starts with praising God and then ends with hope that someday humankind will get its act together. We'll all be united and we'll worship God together instead of fighting over our differences. So let's pray Aleinu together. You can find the words on page 36, and let's rise for this prayer. Aleinu leshabeach la'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות אדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד. So our next prayer, the Kaddish, is one of the most well-known Jewish prayers. Sometimes you might even hear it on TV if you're watching a show or a movie that has a Jewish funeral scene. You'll probably hear the words of Kaddish. So it's a very old prayer that traces back to before the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, which happened in the year 70. And unlike most Jewish prayers, which are in Hebrew, the Kaddish prayer is written in Aramaic, which is the language of the rabbis. It was the language that people actually spoke and understood at the time of its composition. And there's multiple forms of Kaddish. The most famous one is Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish, which is the one we're going to do tonight. But there's also a scholar's Kaddish, and a half Kaddish, and a full Kaddish. So lots of different Kaddishes, but the most famous is this one, which we say to honor the memory of our loved ones who have passed. So tonight we recite Kaddish to honor the memories of Bradley Crow, father of Brian Crow, and mark the yahrzeits of Seymour Breslow, father of Marilyn Breslow, my grandmother Rebecca Deal, Ed Evans, brother-in-law of Judy Katzen, Harry Freeman, grandfather of Alyssa Freeman, Miriam Gross, grandmother of Alex Simon, Keith Heller, husband of Beth Jones, Abraham Coleman, grandfather of Shira Ledman, Sylvia Moses, mother of Joel Moses, Natalie Scheffler, mother of Lisa Wilburn, Joseph Sirachi, grandfather of Selena Geider, Ruth Tomko, aunt of Mark Tomko, and Billy Yeager, our former accompanist here at ORME. Are there other loved ones whose memories we want to honor tonight?
My grandmother, Antonia Foot.
Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing. We continue together as a community of support with Mourner's Kaddish on page 38. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, bi'alma divrach hirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehe shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam olomei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yit hadar, v'yit alev, v'yit halal, shemei de kudesha, brichu, le'ela, mikol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechamata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru, amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim alenu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, alenu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort for all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. So some of the prayers or songs that we use as our opening or closing songs in our service come from ancient biblical texts. Some come from modern or medieval Jewish poetry, and some come from modern bands. So tonight we're going to conclude our service with a song from a modern international band called Sheva, which is the Hebrew word for seven. And this band is dedicated to spreading the message of peace. So we're in the middle of page 39. This song is known as Salam, and also Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, peace will eventually come upon us. So near the middle of page 39. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. And speaking of salam, just want to again especially welcome our sisters from the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom. And thank you for stepping outside of your comfort zone, sitting through a very long service, all in Hebrew. And I'd also like to invite one of the sisters from this group, Sarah, to also represent ORME's board and share some brief announcements.
Shabbat Shalom, y'all. It is so nice to see so many people here. And hey, sisters, it's nice to have you guys here especially. Tomorrow, we've got Torah study at 11 in the morning. That's in person and virtual. And it looks like on Sunday, we're going to have a religious school field trip to Congregation or Atid, which is out on Patterson Avenue, and Torah Tots at ORME. It also looks like we've got some various committee meetings, and next Thursday, May 4th, we are going to have the Bon Air Interfaith Trialogue from 6:15 to 8 p.m. at the Islamic Center of Virginia. And we're going to be talking about the purpose of creation and human nature. So I'm sure we can get through all of that in 2 hours. The purpose of creation and human nature. Sounds easy enough. We're going to have Jewish meditation in person and on Zoom next Friday before Shabbat services. And we've got the second Interfaith Trialogue session in the 3-part series at St. Edward's Catholic Church on Thursday, May 11th. So these are all on Thursdays, May 4th, May 11th, and May 18th. Yes. And the May 11th session is going to be how we respond to tragedies, again at 6:15 p.m. Thank you so much for being here, and stick around for the Oneg. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Sarah. And very special thank you to Doug. He has been wonderful playing piano the past 2 weeks. So we hope that you will, that we haven't scared you off. You'll join us again at future times when our schedules all align. So thank you again very much. And before we go to Oneg, does anyone have any quick questions about the service? So it's not often that we kind of stop before each prayer and say, what is this prayer about? Where did it come from? What are we doing? So any questions that weren't covered that you want to ask now that other people might be curious about? Or did you oh, I knew all that? Yeah, Adrienne?
Can you talk about the Kaddish and the fact that it doesn't talk about death or dying?
Mm-hmm. So if you look at the words for the Kaddish, so originally the Kaddish was recited at the end of a study period. There was the Kaddish de Rabbanan, the scholars or the rabbis' Kaddish. So it's just a typical prayer that you would expect, and actually sounds a little bit like Christian prayers from the same time period, right? But it's just in Aramaic. So that's how it began. And then they probably started saying the scholars' Kaddish when a scholar died, right? Because it kind of fits a scholar. And then other people are like, well, that guy had the Kaddish at his funeral, right? my dad's like kind of a scholar. He should have this prayer too. So before you knew it, everyone wanted this prayer that has nothing to do with death, right? It's just praising God. The last part is in Hebrew. Oseh Shalom Bimromav is the only Hebrew part. Everything else is in Aramaic. And if you're ever trying to figure out, if you know what an aleph letter looks like in Hebrew, if you're trying to figure out, is this prayer in Hebrew or Aramaic, one of the easiest indications is, are there a lot of words that end with the letter aleph, right? Aleph means the in Hebrew, or in Aramaic. So in Hebrew, we say ha'olam, or ba'olam for in the world, but in the Aramaic it says be'alma. Olam becomes alma. Ha'olam alma. So that's one of our indications. And even like kind of secular people who might speak some Hebrew but don't really know Aramaic find a lot of comfort in the rhythmic recitation of this prayer. So it's a lot of the poetry of Jewish prayers is more structural than rhyming. So there's kind of a structural pattern, repetition, lots of adjectives. If you look, the Kaddish is kind of hard to translate. And seems like there's excess words, but that's how poetry happens in Hebrew and Aramaic. So beyond all praises, songs, and adorations, right? You can't just say like, God is cool, the end, right? So it's just as many beautiful embellishments as you can have. That's what we have in the Kaddish prayer. Any other specific questions about that? Or just kind of interesting that death isn't mentioned, even though we use this prayer to remember those who've passed. Yeah, Ron?
Well, I was going to say also, it makes us at a time when we might feel very depressed and sad to do something counterintuitive.
Yeah, so if you've heard of the book of Job, right? Job has an incredible life. He's wealthy. He's got a beautiful family. And then everything goes to garbage instantly, right? He's like, all the blessings turn to curses. And at one point, his wife is like, well, then go bless God, right? And some people think bless was a euphemism for curse, right? If you're that angry, just go yell at God. And instead of yelling at God and being like, how dare you, right, take my loved one away from me, instead, we are offered a more nurturing like approach to God, right? Like, even if we're upset and we might not understand like how this could happen, how death can be such a big part of life, that we still, instead of turning at anger with God, this prayer invites us to turn seeking connection and comfort from God. So that's one of the reasons why it's like someone died and you're like, oh, God is great. God is, instead of like, just let's all yell at God, right? Because it's really upsetting when people die. Any other questions? Yeah, Sarah?
Real quick, the Elenu,
Mm-hmm.
35, there's a description that says that it's been seen as a kind of controversial prayer by, like, well, it was mostly like the Reconstructionists find it to be problematic. Is there an alternate Elenu that's been, like, widely adopted beyond this version?
Yeah, good question. So the controversy behind Elenu is the first paragraph has this line that says that we have a destiny that's unique among the different families of the earth. So some people say unique, like, yeah, of course, we're all unique, we're all special. Like, Jewish people have this kind of relationship with God, Muslim people have this kind of relationship with God, Christian have this kind of relationship with God. They're all special in their own way. But some people think if you call yourself unique, that's kind of arrogant, right? That we're chosen, we're better. It's not about being better, it's about accepting the uniqueness that is you, right? And celebrating exactly what you are. So some don't like the chosenness implied in this verse. So the Reconstructionist movement says, God did not choose us, we chose God. So they rewrite a lot of the prayers, including the Kiddush, right, to make it not that God chose us, but that people choose God. And some, we usually at Ormi, we skip this middle paragraph on page 36. Right? Some have taken the wording from that middle paragraph and put it to the tune of the first paragraph so you can have the same melody and maybe no one will notice that you took out all the questionable content. And then classical reform just didn't do this prayer in Hebrew, they had an English version that was like, let us adore the ever-living God, right? So, like, yeah, so some people know that, right? To the one. So that was their way of getting, like, not dealing with the controversy. You just write a beautiful English substitution, and you don't have to argue about what does it mean to have a unique destiny. Does that mean, like, you're chosen and better than other people? So the Reconstructionist prayer book, I think it's called Kol HaNeshama, they rewrote the Aleinu, and the Reform movement has not agreed upon a movement-wide substitution. So in the standard Reform prayer book, you have some that leave it as is. They say tradition is tradition. Lots of congregations just want to stick with the traditional words. Some put the middle paragraph up, and then some will even print out their own modern words that take out the notion of chosenness and put it as a sticker on the back of the prayer book, and everyone just turns to the sticker prayer. So that's what we did in rabbinical school. We're like, turn to the sticker prayer. And then you had non-controversial Aleinu words. So, yeah. Also, another random fact about Aleinu is many congregations will open the ark and have people rise for Aleinu. And that's because there's another paragraph that we took out that talks about idol worshipers. And one of the insults that were like, that's too far, right? Was like kind of like dissing idol worshipers. And one of the words in that line that was taken out sounds like the word for spitting. So some people would literally spit during that prayer, and to get people to stop spitting in the synagogue like hundreds of years ago, they're like, that's it, we're opening the ark. So, like, you can't spit when the ark is open. So, and that's why, like today, I think if you go to Beth Ahaba or like other synagogues, they'll have someone open the ark for Aleinu, and you're just like, I guess we just open the ark a lot. But it was because of the spitting thing that happened hundreds of years ago. So, yeah. Okay. Any other random questions, or are we like ready for challah? Ready for challah. All right, thank you again, Doug, and thank you, everyone. If you can please return your services to the table near the entrance and join us in the back for Kiddush and Motzi.